We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote those words to remind us that our anxieties are often just phantoms. But if Seneca were to stand in the shoes of someone living below the poverty line today, he'd find that reality is far more creative in its cruelty than any nightmare we could dream up. See, for some people, suffering isn't just a state of mind you can meditate your way out of. It's a physical, persistent force, a storm that never runs out of lightning. We've all heard those stories, the ones that make your skin crawl because the misfortune feels too heavy, too concentrated. Picture a man. He lost both legs in a train accident as a child. He didn't let it break him, though. He worked his fingers to the bone, built a life, and started a family. But then, his child gets a cancer diagnosis. Now, the entire family is huddled in a damp, one-room apartment, suffocated by medical bills and the deafening silence of unemployment. There is no exit sign in sight. Or think about the woman who delivers milk at 4 a.m. every single morning, navigating pitch-black streets just to keep her head above water. Her life is a relentless sequence of tragedies. Her son and daughter-in-law killed in a crash, a husband whose life she saved by donating a piece of her own liver, only for her to be struck by a car herself while on her delivery route. When we see lives like these, we instinctively cry out at the universe. Why is it so unfair? They've already lost everything. Why won't the world just give them a break? But if we strip away the emotion and look at this through a cold, analytical lens, we realize these aren't just coincidences. This isn't bad luck in some mystical sense. It's a logical, systemic feedback loop. It's the geometry of a trap. Why is it that the unlucky are almost always the ones with the least? To understand this, we have to stop looking at these tragedies as freak accidents and start seeing them as the inevitable results of a life lived without a safety net. To understand the architecture of this trap, we have to look at how poverty eats away at a person from the inside out. Imagine being born into scarcity. The house is falling apart, the environment is toxic, and you eat whatever is cheapest. This isn't just about a hungry stomach, it's about the biological foundation of a human being. No money means no quality education. No education means no intellectual leverage. But more importantly, the chronic stress of poverty creates pre-existing conditions before your life even truly begins. When you grow up in a food desert or a mold-infested apartment, your body becomes a fragile vessel. By the time that child grows up, they face a brutal reality. They don't have the degrees for high-paying mental labor, and their weakened health makes grueling manual labor impossible to sustain long-term. So they're pushed into the danger zone, the low-paying, high-risk jobs that no one else wants. Delivering milk or driving for a gig app at 3 a.m. isn't a side hustle for them, it's a survival tactic. And in those environments, an accident isn't a what if, it's a when. And then, the trap enters the realm of the heart. In the world of poverty, marriage is often a union of vulnerabilities. You don't marry into wealth or stability, you marry someone from your own world. You find a partner who is also struggling, perhaps also disabled by the system, or burdened with their own health crises. You come together hoping to lean on each other, but often you're just two drowning people trying to use each other as a life vest. When this couple has a child, the cycle completes its first full rotation. The child is born into the same damp room, with the same lack of resources, and often with health issues inherited from parents who never had the chance to be healthy. This isn't karma. It's the biological and economic debt of poverty being passed down with compound interest. In America, we love the myth of the bootstraps. We tell people that effort is the only variable that matters. But let's be honest, that's a hollow lie. The man who lost his legs and still worked to feed his family was exerting more effort than any CEO in a climate-controlled office. The woman delivering milk while sacrificing her own liver showed more grit than any hustle culture influencer on Instagram. Effort is finite. Time is finite. When your starting point is 50 feet underground, you have to spend 90% of your energy just to reach the surface. You have zero margin for error. For a wealthy person, a flat tire is an annoyance. For a person in extreme poverty, a flat tire is a job-ending catastrophe. It leads to a late arrival, which leads to a firing, which leads to an unpaid medical bill, which leads to a health crisis. In poverty, the entire mountain is unstable. A single pebble can start a total landslide. The cruelest truth is that effort alone is rarely enough to change the geometry of a life. Those who are unlucky are actually the ones working the hardest just to stay in place. They're running a marathon through a swamp where every step takes 10 times the energy of a step on solid ground. The unfairness of the world isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system. Poverty acts as a multiplier for disaster. It strips away the armor of education, health, and social connections, leaving the individual standing naked in a storm of risks. Lightning doesn't strike the poor because the universe is evil. It strikes them because they are the only ones left standing in the rain without an umbrella. So, what is the conclusion? Do we just sigh at the tragedy and move on? Seneca would tell us that we must endure. But a modern understanding tells us that we must stop blaming the victims for their bad luck. Worrying about why the poor are so unlucky is actually a worry about the very foundations of our society. We don't need to offer them empty platitudes about hard work. We need to acknowledge that this vicious cycle is a mechanical, predictable reality. The next time you hear a story of a family crushed by one disaster after another, don't call it fate. Call it what it is: the inevitable result of a life lived without a cushion. They are not thriving. They are surviving through extraordinary resilience in a garden of thorns. And the most wealthy thing we can do is stop pretending they simply didn't try hard enough.